Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Bernadette here with you this afternoon for Quest Connect, and I hope that you can hear me okay and can see me okay, and please give me a little thumbs up if we are good to go. So welcome. It's a joy to be here with you as always. Just not a luxury, but a sense of essential to get together sometimes and just talk about how we can make small changes in our lives, how we can shift ourselves in a direction that sustains us a little more. So we are going to talk today about making change. And it is a change. We've just slipped over into winter, the first day of winter today. So I want to talk a little bit with you about how we manage that, how we manage the shifts in our lives, how we manage change, and how we can care for ourselves in these moments of transition. So I hope that sounds interesting to you. It's very interesting to me. I feel like I need to be reminded of this all the time. So very happy to be here with you. And you might just see me checking the screen occasionally because Facebook has changed its settings and I can't quite see any comments or anything, but I'd love you to let me know that you're here, and I'll try and keep an eye on the comments. So let us come together and just begin with a moment of reflection, a moment of stillness where we make a change, right? We interrupt our mind's normal momentum and we just pause it and we interrupt it, we deconnect it, we decouple those automatic neural pathways, and that makes a huge change, as we know. So if you're happy to close your eyes, then do that. I like to close my eyes. It just quietens my brain a little bit. I feel like I gather my attention inward a bit. If you don't like closing your eyes, then just sort of defocus. You can look down a little bit, whatever feels comfortable for you. And as we sit together and come together in this moment, let us see if we can make ourselves 5 or 10% more comfortable. Is there a little shift that you can make in the way that you're seated, or if you're lying down, if you're walking? Could you relax your shoulders a bit? And sometimes I need to move my shoulders to remind myself to let them drop down a little bit more away from my ears. And as we sit and come together, whatever position you're in, and it's good to invite yourself in, just to set an intention, just here, just now, just for these moments. I'm going to bring my attention, my wholehearted attention to this moment. I'm not going to be thinking about the future, what comes next, what I'm going to do later today. Not going to be ruminating on what's already passed, but just anchor my attention. And as we know, the doorway in for our awareness is through the senses. These are great doorways to bring our attention from our automatic thinking into what's actually happening right here, right now. So let's start with the sense of touch. And maybe you can feel where your body's touching the chair, the floor, whatever position you're in. What's supporting you? What's underneath you? What's behind you? And can you feel those contact points? And I always like to imagine that I'm giving my weight, I'm allowing, I'm surrendering, I'm trusting that the earth is going to support me. And I trust that even though I'm inside a building, that underneath the foundations of this building is Mother Earth, and I can rest my weight down to that support. So there's the body. It's the body feeling the body. Maybe there's a sense of weight or pressure, a sense of just the overall position that you're in, the posture that you're in. See if you can sense where your clothing touches your skin and where where the skin is touched by the air on your hands or your cheeks. We're not thinking about it, we're just sensing it. The body with all the information that's coming in through the sense of touch. Sense of touch also includes movement. You might feel how your body moves when you breathe. And what about your sense of hearing? Regardless of what you know about your hearing, perhaps your hearing is diminished, you're wearing hearing aids, regardless of any of that, just imagining that your ears function like little microphones, that they actually just collect sound. And we're not naming sounds, we're not labeling anything, we're not judging it, we're not having any preference, we're just noting what the sounds are that arise. And there will be sounds. You may notice the space between the sounds. So just scan your awareness around outside the room that you're in, if you're in the room, or if you're outdoors, just listening for the furthest sound. Sounds far in the distance. And now maybe some sounds that are closer by. And maybe there are internal sounds. You often hear your gurgling of your own digestion or the sound of your own breathing. Sometimes you can hear your heartbeat. Just noting, sensing and feeling, listening. And gently let us just touch on the other senses. Note your sense of sight, even if your eyes are closed. Notice what you notice. Maybe behind your closed eyes there's a pattern, a little shadow, a little color, some light. Maybe if your eyes are open, just notice what falls within your gaze. And tune in with your sense of smell. Maybe there's nothing to notice, but sometimes you note there's a scent in the air or an aroma, or you just notice the mechanics of the sense of smell, which is your nostrils, and you might just notice the physical touch of the air as it passes in and out of the nostrils. And you might notice an aroma, maybe, but you may notice that you're breathing in through one nostril more than the other. Sometimes you can notice that. Don't need to change it. You'll just notice another time that it will have changed. And sometimes when we're quite balanced between the two hemispheres of the brain, you might feel both nostrils are open. So the breathing is coming and going all day long without your awareness, but we can bring our awareness very gently to it. And that makes a huge difference to our sense of being present, to being well, to being calm, to peaceful. So there's the breath, sight, sound, smell. And you might notice a little taste inside the mouth or not, but the mouth is often an area that's full of different sensations. You can notice sometimes that your mouth might be dry or quite moist, but you can generally sense the inside of the cheeks, the roof of the mouth, the floor of the mouth, the tongue. It's an area rich with nerve endings and thus rich with sensations. So generally when we bring our attention through the gateway of all these senses, we can notice that the whole body, in fact, is full of different sensations. And you might note now that your face and your head kind of full of sensation around the eyes, cheeks. If you notice your ears, there's often a lot of sensation in the ears and around the ears. The mouth, the head and face full of sensation. And whilst there may be parts of our body that feel a little numb, a little closed off to our awareness, you can generally sense some areas. Often we're drawn to where there's discomfort. So just notice whatever sensations your awareness is immediately drawn to. Could be the weight of your body, standing or seated. Could be the touch of clothing, but it could be a little tightness somewhere. And then choose another area, maybe your hands. And I always like to ask myself, if I didn't know the word hands and I couldn't see them or move my hands, how would I know they were there? And the answer generally is I can feel them. So be aware of the sensation in your hands, your fingers, and maybe all the way up your arms into your shoulders. Maybe you can feel the back and the chest and the pelvis, the torso. And maybe you can sense some sensation in your legs, in your thighs or your calves or down into your feet. If you can't sense your feet, just move your toes a little. And just sensing and feeling what your feet are in touch with. You might press your feet down into the ground a little. Note how that changes your posture. You might be aware of coolness or warmth or some sensation or some numbness. But we've taken our awareness around the body. And in that way, we've brought our attention to the present moment, but also we've brought our attention to our own presence, our own awareness of ourselves. So gently, when you feel ready, you might like to breathe in a little more fully. You might like to move a little bit. If you've been sitting like I have for a while, you might like to move your shoulders. I always like to do that. I like to move my arms. I like to shake my hands. And just have a stretch if you like and bring your attention back. And as always, treat it like an experiment and notice, how do you feel? Any different? Sometimes we get bored in these moments of quiet because the mind is so good at racing. So if you found you were bored or fidgety or anxious or anything, that's okay. We welcome whatever's there and just treat it like information and see what happens next time. So just do the experiment. And I'd love to hear if I feel a little more present, a little more calm, and I'd love to hear if you do as well. I'm going to keep just scrolling down because I can't quite see any comments, but I'm trusting you're there. So how do we navigate change and how do we manage our sense of well-being through transition? whatever that transition might be. And I want to start with given that it's the first day of winter here where I am in Sydney, I want to read you a definition that's come from a book called Wintering by a woman called Catherine May, I think. I can't remember her name. Sorry about that. But if you Google Wintering, you'll find her. And she has written a beautiful book that came out of her own very disconnected, very fallow time in her life through illness and loss and family situations. And she talks about it through the lens of literature and through nature, and how we can come to not only accept these transition times that we might not have asked for and we don't like, but how we can learn to be at peace and how to love those times. So this comes from Catherine's book, Wintering. I've written it in my diary. So wintering, a season in the cold. It is a fallow period in life when you're cut off from the world, feeling rejected, sidelined, blocked from progress, or cast into the role of an outsider. It might be the result of illness or grief or loss, caring for someone. It could be the bereavement period. It could be even following a birth. It might come from a humiliation or a failure, a breakup. So it's a period of transition when we've temporarily fallen between two worlds. And she goes on to say, some winterings creep upon us more slowly, accompanying the protracted death of a relationship or the gradual ratcheting up of our caring responsibilities as our parents age. I can relate to that. Or the drip, drip, drip of lost confidence, or something appallingly sudden, like a death, or discovering that your skills are no longer required and you're obsolete. However it arrives, wintering is usually involuntary, lonely, and deeply painful, yet also inevitable. Oh, I absolutely loved that definition, that yes, it's lonely, it's involuntary, we didn't ask for it, but it is inevitable. It's part of life. So I think that's all I wanted to say about her definition. Did you like that? It's really given me great comfort. So knowing that wintering is normal and natural, it's a state that we can embrace, then how do we navigate this? And I'm reminded of a time when my yoga teacher said to me, this was several years ago, two things I'm reminded of. First was my yoga teacher, this has got to be 10, 15 years ago, and I was complaining about something, and she said to me, embrace the fallow period. And I remember thinking, oh, really? Is that all you've got to say? Really? I don't want to. I don't like it. I want to change it. I don't like this. I don't want to get through it. And I keep hearing those words, embrace the fallow period. Because everything in nature needs a fallow period, a time of rest, right? We're not productive all the time. And another reminder that I got, and this was a couple of years ago, when in Australia we'd had a couple of winters that were very dry and very hot. And my body worker that I go to, great osteopath, he was talking about in himself and what he'd noticed in his patients, that people were incredibly tired, that sleep was not enough. You know, people were feeling a sense of burnout. And this was couple of years ago. So I think just post-COVID. We'd had the bushfires and all of that, but we'd had some very, very dry winters. And his take on it was that because in Australia, when we have good weather in winter, we don't normally do as one does and one should do in winter. We don't take our rest. When it's raining, when it's cold, we generally will stay indoors. We will read a book. We will do more quiet indoor activities. But when it's beautiful outside and the weather's warm, we just keep going. And we had just kept going in Australia. And he was noticing a level of stress and burnout, fatigue and anxiety in people that he'd never noticed before. And he put it down to the fact that we don't take our rest in winter as most of the world does and as all of our ancestors have done. So wintering, necessary, absolutely necessary, absolutely natural. And one of the ways we do talk about the fallow period at Quest, you might have heard about our analogy of the compost. And if any of you are gardeners, you'll know, and I have 3 composts out the back here. You know that a compost needs time. It needs all the ingredients. It needs turning, needs water, needs good worms. It needs dry stuff, the right balance to wet stuff, brown stuff, green stuff, all the stuff. It can't just sit there and rot, because then the cockroaches might move in, as I have found in one of my composts, because I wasn't turning it enough. It was too dry. So the cockroaches have moved in. That's another story. But the compost needs the right ingredients. And Petria always gives this lovely analogy, and I've seen it too. You know how sometimes in a compost, when you've put all the stuff in, someday you get a little sprout, and it might be a little pumpkin or a tomato or something, but something will sprout in the compost. You didn't plant it. It's just come out of this rich kind of fodder and the time, and because all the ingredients have been there, the right environment to create this new growth. And we talk about at Quest, when we are in these periods of transition, often when we're at a crossroads or when we are in a bereavement, a time of recovery, whatever it is, where we don't know what the future holds. We might know that we don't want to go back to who we were. We can't go back. There's a new normal now. And we often talk about it in terms of we know what we don't want, but we don't yet know what we do want. And that is the time for composting. And that's the time where you provide the conditions for the new flowering, for the impulse, for the path ahead to reveal itself, because you have provided the conditions. So you draw in, you nourish yourself physically, you take your rest, you attend to what you can, you give it time, you provide the conditions, you be in that place of acceptance. And one day, you know what it's like. You'll hear something on the radio, or somebody gives you a book, or you just hear a conversation and you know that's it. And your path reveals itself. But it doesn't come out of what we usually try and do is the list of pros and cons. Doesn't come out of, will I, won't I, can I, can't I, should I, shouldn't I, all that mental stuff. It comes out of a deeply replenished state, and then we can move forward into the spring, right? So composting, remember that. What can I do to provide the conditions for my own flowering? So I want to talk about what some of those things are that we can do, some strategies for moving through winter, for composting our life, and for taking our rest. So I want to talk about self-care, not as a luxury, but as an essential basic need of our human life. How we can have some little micro breaks that support us in our self-care, and what we can do physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially to make that bridge into the next space. The transition time is a bridge, right? Where we have to provide the conditions. So those are all the things I want to talk about today. How's that sounding? I hope that's interesting to you. What I want to talk about first up is our own sense of our own awareness. There's nothing, all the great ones say, there's nothing more important for our true growth, for our getting through winter, for our managing transitions well, than realizing that we are not the voice in our head, but we are the one who hears the voice in our head. That is a huge and basic but revelatory bit of information for a lot of people. We get so identified with this voice in our head. So just knowing that all of the commentary in our own mind, it's involuntary. It's not our fault. It's generally got a flavor of not getting it right, not good enough. It's generally about the past and the future. It's not our fault, but when we note that it is not who we are, that is a game changer. And without that, really, we can't really change anything else. That is the biggest realization and the easiest one to miss and the easiest one to overlook. So nothing more important for our true growth, for our peace, for our calm, for our managing change, managing relationships, than just knowing we are not the voice in our head, but we are the one who hears it. And having that little bit of a witness gap changes everything. Okay? So how do we disentangle ourselves from that, from that commentary? Lots and lots and lots of ways that we can do that. And the senses are the way in, right? So here's my first tip to you, is to use daily and routine activities, things that we already do, that are usually a means to an end, and to use these as and make them into an end themselves, make them into a moment where we observe our mind and not be taken over by our mind. So it might be when we wash our hands. It might be when we're making a cup of tea. Can we make these daily routine moments into an end themselves? And this is mindfulness, and these are moments that we can use to become the one who hears the voice in our mind, not the voice in our mind, okay? Simple, but so profound, right? So when we're completely, and here's where the senses come in, because when we're completely engaged with the sensory experience of washing your hands, for instance, the warm water or the cool water, the soap, the scent of the soap, the feel of the water on your hands, all of that, whatever it is, we're present, right? We're in the now, and that's not a secondary thing. That is being present. That's being right here, right now, being alive. That's awareness being aware of itself. And it quietens the voice in the mind, and it gives us that capacity to witness it. We're out of the what we call the default mode network in the brain, which is the automatic voice in the head, and we're into the task positive network, focused on one thing, which has a whole chemistry that's very healing. So washing the hands, okay, one way. We're out of the dream of thinking. We're out of our mind and we're into presence. I wrote myself a few notes too. When we're making a cup of tea, when we're boiling the kettle, again, it's the sensory, tactile moments. The means to an end, but the end in itself, because it takes us out of the unconscious mind, out of the thought processes, and it gives us little gaps. And these are little gaps not only in our thinking, but little gaps of spaciousness in ourselves. And in those little gaps, we might experience peace, calm, a sense of being more than the story in my own mind. So what about the times when we're waiting? How much of our life is spent waiting? Waiting for a train, waiting for a bus, waiting for a phone call, waiting at the doctor's, waiting to get into a lift. Generally, when we're waiting, we're impatient, driven by the story in our mind that this shouldn't be happening, or we're just compulsively getting out our phone, okay? So here's an experiment. Again, these little moments make a huge difference, that we don't just daydream or get on our phone, but we use it as a moment to be present, to notice the sights around us, to notice that we're breathing, to be aware of the aliveness of sensations in the body, to notice whatever's in our field of perception. And that could be a minute that you're waiting for a lift or something. But in that moment, we're not producing more dysfunctional unhappiness with the situation of waiting. We're not labeling it as bad that I'm waiting. We're not getting impatient and producing stress hormones. We're just being present. And we get to watch the story in our mind that this shouldn't be happening. And we get to change our whole physiology. Our awareness of the sense perceptions becomes awareness of awareness itself. It's very transformative. We have to do this experiment. The other thing I want to say about that is when we're driving, I heard the other day that if you start driving when you're 18, as I did, and you drive till you're 75, you will have spent, and I forget how long, but several months of our life at red traffic lights. So use that as a time to just transcend the voice in the head. Use it as a time to transmute what would be just a moment where we're impatient or the mind is just in its own momentum. Use it as we want to use these external conditions to nourish us, but not to resist them. So we want to create a little bit more inner spaciousness. And we do that through the sense doorways. It's an enormous change, and it will improve our life to know that we're not the voice in our head, but the one who hears the voice in our head. That voice in our head is generally negative. We know that. It's full of a commentary that the conditions are not right. And when we're not doing that, we actually can be very peaceful. The situations in our life improve, our relationships can improve, and the narrative of me and my life story, we get to just loosen the grip of that. So we get less defined by the circumstances in our life, and we get just to experience our life without commentary, without judgment. It's the voice in our head that keeps us from being truly present in any relationship, because we're evaluating. We've got a screen actually between us and the other. You've heard this before, right? But this is number one, managing our transitions. So use the daily moments of life as doorways into the present moment to know that you're not the voice, you're the one who hears the voice. That's gold. That's absolutely a game changer. I think that's all we need to say about that, because it changes everything. So use those moments to come to your senses, and let us think about self-care. I think self-care needs a rebrand, and I always like to refer to it as cultivation, self-cultivation. But looking for my little picture, I've got a picture I want to show you. I'll find it soon. Think about your inner, if you had an internal cup or an internal bucket. Sometimes I just ask myself to get an image of that. And when I do, often I get a sense of a half-empty cup or a very empty bucket, a bucket that's been a bit neglected, or any of that kind of thing. And that for me is a clue every now and again, just to check in and see how full is my cup. I've actually got a picture of a cup that I check in with. Just don't know where I put it to show you. But when I feel that my cup is empty or it's half full, I need to ask, what am I going to do to fill my cup? So let us think of self-care not as a luxury, not as something to do when we get everything else done, but as an essential. And I was reminded of this the other day. Interestingly, if you Google the hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The basis of our needs as a human being to develop, physiological needs are at the basis. The next is feeling safe, safety. And then we progress to social needs, self-esteem needs, and at the peak of the hierarchy is self-actualization, which is where we're illumined, where we're not maybe illumined, but free of the ideas, really living in a state where we're not the voice in our head, but we're more observant. When we're living in a state of awareness, we're free of our belief systems, free of our judgments, free of our story, free to live, present and alive and vital, right? That's where we all want to get to. None of that can happen unless we are attending to our physiological needs. So the first two layers, the first two levels of our hierarchy of needs, physiological and safety, they're about our nervous system. They're about our whole system of if we're not attending to those, through nourishing ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then we cannot progress. We can't actualize ourselves. So I've taken to, and I was reminded of this by a wonderful woman the other day, thinking of self-care not as a luxury, obviously, but as a basic needs, human needs, basic survival needs. So every day, to fill my cup, what am I going to do physically? Can I eat a nourishing meal? Is there one meal I could cook today? Given that it's winter, there's some warming foods, nourishing foods, slow cooked foods, soups and stews and things like that, that actually nourish ourselves. Can I move my body? The body needs to move, and it needs to move regularly. And I like the word movement rather than exercise, because exercise, has a lot of baggage with it, but just movement. And that I try and fit that in between other activities. So could I, while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil, can I stretch my arms up? Can I roll my shoulders? Can I do a little shaking in between one phone call and the next activity? What can I do as I'm sitting at my desk? Can I rotate my ankles and move my feet? So every day, what can we do to nourish ourselves physically? What does your body need? Needs rest, needs movement, needs good food. And rest, that's a multi-layered thing. And I think I talked on one of our other Quest Connects or our at home with Quest about different types of rest. We need not just to sleep well, that's essential, but we need creative rest, we need mental rest, social rest, emotional rest, different kinds of rest. So Google the 7 different types of rest, but actually they all come down to the more we can practice relaxation, the more our nervous system will accept sleep. Because rest, for me, here's a good definition: anything that makes your nervous system feel safe enough to let go. So we need to attend to ourselves physically, mentally. How are you going to quieten the mind? You might not be able to quieten it, but you can observe it. You can have that moment of gap, reminding yourself consistently throughout the day that you're not your thoughts. That's a game changer. So you need to quieten the mind. You need to decouple from your automatic thinking. You need to nourish your mind, keep your mind in good company. The books you read, the people you hang out with, the movies you watch, the news you minimize. I like to have little post-it notes around sometimes with a positive kind of uplifting affirmation, because it reminds me, because often the talk in my own mind is not positive or uplifting. So little nourishing things that you can do. That's mindful practice that we just talked about when you're at the traffic lights, when you're washing your hands, making a cup of tea. Use those moments, those daily activities, not as a means to an end, but the end in themselves. So that helps us physically. Mentally. Emotionally, what are we going to do to nourish ourselves? Fill our cup. It could be that we journal our feelings and get them out. I really recommend that we talk to someone. It could be a trusted friend, but often it's better to have a neutral person to hear us. But our emotions need to get out. They need to get out. Maybe we get them out through shaking them out, moving them, expressing them, making a sound, singing them out, whatever it is. But not just letting them ferment inside. They need to pass through us. And I had an experience a couple of weekends ago. I was on a beautiful grief program at Quest. Beautiful weekend of being in a supportive circle for people who are, nourishing themselves, wanting to themselves and provide the conditions to make this grieving process more helpful, more doable. So coming together is really important in our grief. And I realized on that weekend that I still had a lot of grief, or there was a lot of grief arising, and I had a moment of feeling really sad. And rather than saying, I am sad, it was quite automatic for me to just note, oh, sadness is passing through right now. It's not who I am. It's here, and I don't love this, and it's pretty full on, but it is going to shift. It's not a permanent state. And just knowing that, and I love the Irish Gaelic way of speaking about the emotions, and I've taken that on. So as well as saying sadness is passing through, I use the Irish phrasing of the sadness is on me right now, but it'll be off me later. The sadness is on me, the grief is on me, the hurt is on me, the resentment is on me, whatever it is. It's not who I am. It's this thing that comes and I'm in the puddle of it, but I will be out of the puddle of it soon. Knowing that, reminding yourself of that, journaling that stuff is key to filling your little internal cup. Social connection is important to nourish our transitions. We need to reach out. And sometimes we don't feel like that. We want to isolate ourselves, but we are in a crisis of anxiety and loneliness. And we need to reach out in whatever ways we can. So I feel like this virtual community is deep and rich and nourishing to me. And we need more of that. So social connection, generally in real life, is what helps, what makes that transition easier. So whatever we can do, and it could be just, as a friend said to me, go to the same cafe at the same time regularly, and you'll see the same people, and you get to have greetings, and people see you, and you get to feel these incidental moments of connection. They're studying this now, and they're actually more important, or as important, as our primary relationships and those close in our inner circle. We need to feel connected and plugged into a wider field. And that's the barista, that's the librarian, that's the bus driver, the person behind the counter at the shops. These people that we clock regularly, we look in the eyes and we say, hey, I see you. We need that for ourselves. So physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, we need that sense of connection. And boundaries. I think this is a big subject, and I've talked about it before. But boundaries, really, anything, a physical limit, a mental limit, an emotional limit, a social limit, a limit that makes you feel comfortable. It's what's okay for you and what's not okay. So boundaries can help make our transitions. No, I can't come to that barbecue today. Thanks for asking me. Sure, I'll come, but I'll only stay for an hour. Or I can't come this week, but how about next week? finding what works for you and setting limits on that, because this winter period, this transition that we're in the Southern Hemisphere, it is meant to be a time of rest. And we do need to put limits on our activity to nourish ourselves. So I think that's what I wanted to say. Knowing you're not the voice in your head, having a sense of what you need every day to fill your cup, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, what social connections you need, what boundaries you might need to put around those. And the other thing that my other strategy for self-care, which, as we know, it's a basic human need, is micro breaks. So I mentioned before, when I'm at the red traffic light or I am boiling the kettle, what can you do? So micro breaks for me may be hand on heart and a deep breath. Just one deep breath, and you might want to try that now. Just how does that feel when you just pause and it does interrupt that voice in your head? So micro breaks, it doesn't need to be big breaks. I'm a carer now, living mostly as a carer now. I don't get big breaks, but I can have many micro breaks. So what I did today, this morning, took a cup of tea outside. Just a commitment that, okay, I'm going to have the first cup of tea outside. Can you do that on a veranda, in your garden? Can you do a cup of tea without anyone around you, without your phone, just being there with the hot drink, with the sounds, with the sun, with the feeling of the air, whatever it is? So micro breaks could be a deep breath, could be hand on your heart for a couple of breaths. It could be standing in the sun for a couple of minutes. Could be like I did, that first cup of tea alone in the garden, outside, feeling the air, listening to birdsong. It could be, as I said, stretching up while the kettle boils. Adding little pauses between one activity and the other, because I really think that's the only way we get breaks, is that we often say, well, when I get all the work done, then I'll have a break. And of course, the work is never done. So micro breaks, I think, are key. So how's that for you? We've talked about wintering as a natural process, these fallow times as a natural process. And when we're in grief or loss or trauma or anxiety or depression, or any of these life stages where we're making a shift from one thing to another and we're unsure, the first thing is accepting that this is natural, that it's normal, that it's essential, actually, making peace with it. So embracing the fallow period, the idea of composting, and composting is providing the conditions in which we can flourish. So thinking every day, my inner energy bucket or cup, what does it need physically? What does it need mentally? What can I do emotionally? Could I just name the emotion? That's good enough. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, what is it that gives me a sense of awe? Really, that's all you need to be having a sense of spirituality or a sense of what's nourishing my spirit. It could be nature for you. It's generally something like the night sky or, the sunrise, the sunset. We love these. We love nature because nothing in nature is waiting, right? Nothing in nature is anxious. Nothing in nature is resentful or fearful. Nature just is, and that reminds us of our true nature, who we are when we're not absorbed with the involuntary stream of narrative in our brains, which is not our fault. So yeah, what can we do? I made a list for myself, and I have every day, I had it here to show you, but I don't know what I've done with it, but a list every day. Okay, physically, right, I'm going to go for a walk, even 10 minutes every day. Mentally, I'm doing my gratitude diary because it's really great, and I've got my list of things to do. And I set my phone regularly to go off at random times so that when the phone goes off, I just notice what stream of thinking was I in then? And I just get a moment to say, oh yeah, there I was, replaying, rehashing, rewriting, or imagining, fantasizing. And I just give a little bit of compassion to myself. Also, in these pauses between activities, I will move my body, generally shake, roll my shoulders, that kind of thing. So I'm going to finish with a bit of movement with you, and hopefully you'll join me in that. So I think about composting. What do I need physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually to fill my cup? And I think about micro breaks. This is my self-care at the moment, is micro breaks. And it's not self-care as a luxury when I get it all done, but it's essential for my self-actualization, that I fulfill my physiological needs and my sense of safety. And my sense of safety is tied up in my nervous system. If I'm full of all the anxious thoughts in my mind, then my nervous system is on edge. So what can I do to calm my nervous system? Move, rest, dance, drink water, hydrate, all the things we've already talked about. Firstly, just knowing you're not the voice in your head, but the one that watches, game changer. So I'm going to just see if there's any comments. Oh, yes, I've seen some comments. Thank you. I've only just seen them. Thank you, Suzanne. It is comforting, isn't it, to know that that's not who we are? Oh, thanks, Sharon and Jeanette. These are the only comments I can see right now, and I love that that you found some comfort in that. So thank you. So I want to finish just with a little bit of tapping, a little bit of shaking, and then a little meditation. How about that? So if you can, maybe stand up. But first off, I just shake. I shake my hands. I shake my shoulders. I give everything a little shake. You know, no one's watching. I know you are, but generally I have a sense no one's watching, so I can let it all go. And then just as you stop your shake, maybe just close your eyes and feel the echo of that movement. Maybe you feel there's a little fizz, a little residue, some sensation that you notice. So then with your shoulders, you can bring your hands onto your shoulders and roll them like that, or you might just roll them as I do. They can be together or alternating. Generally, that reminds me to take a deeper breath. And then I'm going to bring my hands to my head. You might like to do that too, and just give a big tap all across the top, back, sides of the head. Can't really get that wrong. It's a great wake-up call. I like to imagine all my brain cells just sparking, fizzing. Notice the feeling of that, right? Kind of nice. And then with one hand on one shoulder, give a little squeeze to the shoulder. I like to imagine like I'm kneading dough. Not that I do that very often. Kneading dough. And then I give a good squeeze down the arm, just so you can see. Squeezing down the arm, squeezing the hand. I like to imagine I'm drawing tension out and flinging it away. So back to the shoulder, squeezing all the way down, squeezing, 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 squeezing. One more time. Good, and then just feel the difference between that arm and the other arm. How does that feel? You can feel it, right? Energy. There's been a change in circulation, a change in energy. Let's try the other side. Give a good squeeze to the shoulder, as if you're kneading those muscles there. I think most people have shoulder and neck tension. I do think it's related to our screens. What can we do? We can do this. We can squeeze down the arm, squeeze. Imagine you're flinging energy off the arm. How's that for you? Just squeezing, flinging energy off. One more time. I feel like I'm pulling tension out. Good. And then notice how that feels. And after I've done that and I've sensed that, then I often go back to tapping. So tapping the shoulder and tapping down the arm and up the arm, down the side. So I go down the shoulder, down the arm, and generally go down the thumb side, up the little finger side, down the side of the body. See how that feels for you. I'm so grateful that you're here with me. It just makes such a lovely difference being here with you. When you feel that, I feel like my shoulder, the one I've just tapped, sits lower. There's more distance between my earlobe and the tip of my shoulder now. I wonder if you feel that. And it encourages me to breathe more fully. Okay, so let's do the other shoulder. Tap, tap, tapping. And then if you like, down the arm, up the arm, down the side body. A couple of times. This is movement, right? This is how we move our body. This is how we can move lymph and improve our circulation and just bring our attention to this. Get out of the head and into the body. Feel that. Hopefully your arms feel more alive. Maybe they're tired from doing that work, but just sense and feel that. And you might give a little tap to your chest. The breastbone, underneath the breastbone is your thymus gland, really important in your immune system function. So give it a little tap, but all across the chest, whatever feels comfortable for you, around the lower ribs. You're stimulating your lungs, your heart. And if you want to, using your hands or your fists, give a thump to your hips and your bottom. Hips and bottom generally feels pretty nice. Your lower back, if you can reach that. And I'm sitting, but I would encourage you, if you're standing, to go down the outside of your legs and up the inside with your tapping, fists or open palms, down the outside, up the inside. And just noticing how that feels for you. Good. And then notice how that feels. I feel, and I hope you do, a little more energy, a little more sense of, that's nice. That's good. I feel that. So let us finish together as we've begun. I still can't find, I drew a picture of a cup and I can't find it to show you, but never mind. I did find this little list, a personal self-care plan. I'd encourage you to do something like that. Physically, mentally, socially, some boundaries I'm going to set, and what I do for fun. And I felt like printing it out makes it more like a plan that I'm going to do it and I'm going to commit to it. So for physically, I've got walking every day. Mindfulness and relaxation, 5 minutes, okay? 5 minutes is okay. 2 minutes is okay. Social connection, who am I going to reach out to, how? And boundaries. You know what? Boundaries for myself. No phone calls after 8 o'clock. Put the phone down after 8 o'clock. And what am I going to do for enjoyment? Music for me, dancing for me. This is how we nourish ourselves in these transient times, in these anxious times. I'm sure you're all feeling it as well. If the only way we're going to change the world is to change ourselves, and if we can soothe ourselves, manage our own anxiety, foster that sense of connection with ourselves and with others, we make a change. It's a new consciousness, as Eckhart Tolle would say, to not be so identified with the voice in our head. That changes everything. So let's come back to a moment together. Just close your eyes if you're able and willing, happy to do that. See if you could relax 5-10% more. And maybe sensing your body breathing. The body's taking care of it. Nothing that you need to do, but take care of, trust that your body takes care of your breathing. And maybe breathe in a sense of appreciation. Appreciation for this breath, for the body that can breathe for us, that knows how to do that. And whilst not every moment the breath doesn't feel comfortable, every moment, sometimes we're a bit, can't get the breath in, or the breath feels anxious. You know, that's okay. You don't need to try and take a deep breath if you're feeling anxious. You might move first. But if in this moment you can just feel how your body moves, how your clothing moves against your skin, feel a little of the sensation from the tapping or the movement, and breathe in a little appreciation for yourself. For those of you who sat and listened for an hour, that's a big deal. You gave an hour of your time to your own well-being and your own development, and to your own nourishment. And you make a difference when you join together with others. We make a difference when we come together in this community. So breathe in a little appreciation, a little gratitude for each other, for our own good intentions and our own good-heartedness, and for the wonderful and blessed community of being with Quest. Thank you, everyone. I wish you well. I love being with you, and I look forward to connecting with you all again in real life, IRL, or here in this beautiful community. So thank you. Really appreciate you. Love your comments, and I look forward to being with you. You make a difference to me. You really do. Be well. Bye-bye. Remember, you're not the voice in the head. What freedom, what joy is that? Thank you.